My friends, hello. We're starting a new season of videos with our partner Keelers. I'll tell you more about it in a moment. Today, the question is how to find a job when you're over 50, when you lose your job and you're over 50, or sometimes even over 40. Today, there are ages after which it's extremely difficult to find a job again. Now, I'm going to tell you something before we go any further, before I paint a bleak picture for you. I know someone in the United Kingdom, someone in my circle of acquaintances. This person lost their job at 58. At 58 years old, they were laid off. And then you see, everyone thought at that age she would never find a job. Well, I can tell you that this person, after 18 months, it didn't happen in 3 days, after 18 months of searching, found a job. And the job is extremely well paid. We're literally talking 6 figures a year. So you see, it's not the end of the world, is it? But there are a number of rules to follow. So first of all, there are two types of people who lose their jobs after the age of 50. Those who have moved regularly from one company to another, and there are people who have stayed too long in one company. Personally, I consider anyone who stays more than 8 or 9 years in a company to have stayed too long. I don't care if a civil servant spends 30 years in public service, that's not a problem. But today, in the volatile economy we have, someone who stays too long in a company is in a dead-end position. I'll just give you a simple example. The other day, I was contacted by someone using the number I always give you on WhatsApp. He told me he spent 18 years in a company. And then he compared his salary to that of his age group, to the people he studied with, the people he hung out with, his friends who are the same age and have the same background as him. He noticed something. He noticed that his salary was much lower than the others who moved on. The people who moved 5 or 6 times in 18 years, who stay for 2 or 3 years and then leave, increase their salary each time, whereas he stayed stuck practically at the same salary for 18 years. So let's get back to the story. But before that, I want to draw your attention to the fact that he uses the link that I attached for you in the pinned comment and in the description. It's based in France, so contact them only if you are in France, and they can help you either to find a job or to change jobs. If you have a job you don't like and you want to go somewhere else, but you're having a bit of trouble, they can help you. And under certain conditions, it's fully covered by France Travail. Thank you. So first of all, the second category is people who haven't had a job for a long time, who haven't been looking for work, who don't have an up-to-date resume and all that. And unfortunately, what I see when they sometimes share their resume with me, I see a resume that isn't very competitive. Why? Well, someone who's 50 years old, for example, will mention a company where he worked between 1995 and 2005. So he's going to explain what he did there. He's going to talk about his experience, but in what terms is he going to talk about it? He's going to talk about it in terms that are too old, outdated, obsolete, terms that might not mean anything today, because you have to know one thing. The people who are going to read your resume today, how old will they be? Often these are people who work in human resources, who work in the recruitment department. They're 22, 23, 25 years old. We're talking about that generation. We're talking about people who were born after the year 2000. So when you talk to them about 1995, many of them weren't even born yet. And when you use, and that's the problem, especially on Pute, the evolving sectors, well, all sectors are evolving. We agree, all sectors of the economy are evolving in their techniques, in their technology, in their terminology. Here it's about terminology. Well, what I sometimes see on tech resumes, for example, is people using terms that are no longer in use. Today, terms that might have been okay back in 1998, but that are no longer, that don't mean anything today. So what I'd really like to get across here, the advice I'd like to give, is to try to look at your resume. Try to look at your resume and ask yourself, are the terms I'm using still being used today? If they're not, I'll replace them with more trendy, more current terms so that people can read the resume. Otherwise, it will be a little bit cryptic if you want. And that's not a good thing, really not a good thing if you have a cryptic resume. Most people won't understand it. Most people will just throw it away. Know one thing, it's very, very rare that you get the attention of a real professional, of a real mentor. The issue is your mentors won't be the ones judging your resume. Let me give you an example. I used to work, for instance, in a company, a big company, and then they would give me resumes. But the problem is, when they gave me the resumes, they were already pre-filtered. I couldn't access the resumes that arrived in the main inbox of the company. So what I received were resumes that had already gone through several people in the recruitment office. So the problem is that this office, those guys, they could recruit a cook, they could recruit a driver, they could recruit a Java developer, they could recruit a Java developer. They could recruit a network engineer, etc. They could recruit a manager. They could, you know what I mean? They have job titles, hundreds of job titles they're recruiting for. They can't be competent everywhere. So the problem is that these people read your resume. And if your resume isn't very clear, what's going to happen? Well, if it's not clear, they're going to reject it. That's all. So first, review your resume, update it with current terminology. That's another story. The problem we also have is that it's always tricky for people who've had a 30-year career but haven't necessarily progressed. In terms of hierarchy, meaning it can be an issue in the sense that people might expect you to be senior in your field, either senior in the hierarchical sense or senior in the technical sense. But the worst, let's be honest, is really the resume. Even so, I don't want to cut off all hope. There's always a way to find work, but that's the hardest part. If you want, it's the person who has a resume with a lot of experience, but not necessarily any progression. Why? There's nothing worse than searching for a junior job at 50. There, it's clear that it's not going to work. Why? Because companies, when there's a junior position, will rather give it to someone young. They'll give it to someone who's 22, 19, or 23 years old. Why? Because for them, that person is more flexible, has fewer social issues, isn't divorced with shared custody, doesn't have kids, doesn't have problems, and so on. For them, it's someone much simpler. They give him a chance. He comes, he works. That's it. Although this trend is starting to reverse in the sense that many companies have realized that some young people don't really want to work. Sometimes they don't show up on the first Monday they're supposed to start, or they only last 3 days. And then they say, I've had enough. And then it's their mom who calls to say he won't be coming back. So there's that too. That means if you're a senior, you can also rely on your dependability. You can rely on the fact that you're serious. You can rely on the fact that you're someone stable, who knows what he wants, who's mature. So this maturity, you shouldn't try to hide it. That means you shouldn't try to act cool or act young. No, you should focus on selling your skills. You sell your skills, your qualities, and your characteristics. In reality, you take all the characteristics of your profile and present them as advantages. Another thing, you shouldn't send out hundreds and hundreds of resumes. I see people saying, I've sent 200 resumes, 500 resumes, 1,000 resumes. You shouldn't do that. It doesn't make any sense. Why? If you send out 500 resumes and you haven't received any response, let me tell you something. It means they're doing something wrong. And if you send out 500 more, we're almost statistically certain you'll get the same results. That means 0 results. So we'll need to try to think if there's a systematic mistake they're making. And here again, Kimuse, the partner of this channel, can help. He can help redo the resume, redo the LinkedIn, etc. It's very important to update them because I've seen plenty of resumes that work against the people who send them. And if there are systematic mistakes, every time you send your resume, you'll always get the same negative result. And finally, maybe one last piece of advice I can give about this is to try to see if there's another way to sell your skills. That means, for example, instead of selling them in an employee context, selling them, for example, as a freelancer. Because sometimes freelancing can be an advantage that allows you to showcase your experience. Because when they're going to hire you and you're quite happy and older, they might see you as a dinosaur, even though that's not necessarily an advantage. Although there are many companies that appreciate that, but it can be a problem. As you can see, ageism is a reality, discrimination based on age. I'm not saying it's an illusion, it's a reality. There are many companies that exclude resumes. For example, when they look, they see that the person graduated from university in 91 or 88. It's clear that the resume goes straight to the trash, that's for sure, in many companies. Now, there's ageism. Ageism doesn't work against you, it works for you. If you're a freelancer, why? Because at that point, your age and your experience become real assets. So also think about ways to present and sell your skills as a freelancer, even through existing platforms like Fiverr, Guru, Upwork, etc., because these are platforms that are extremely useful for this kind of thing. In any case, good luck to those who are looking for work. As for us, we're gently starting this new season again. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send them on WhatsApp. See you very soon, my friends, and we'll see each other in the next one.